This is the new H2D printer from Bambulab. Now, this released a few weeks ago, and obviously, as with any product release, you get all the initial reviews. Today, though, I just want to give you a bit of an overview of this printer from my perspective. Bambu have very kindly sent this over to me to take a look at. This isn't really going to be a review. It's going to be sort of an overview of the printer side, because there is an awful lot going on here that has changed compared to their earlier models, and some of this has actually been a little bit lost just with all of the other information that's gone out there. The fact that it's available with a laser version, cutter, plotter, but there is still an incredible amount of new things with regards to the printing side. We're also going to be talking about things like TPU, because obviously we do a lot of that here. So let's get on with it. Let's take a look at the printer, the new things that you might not be aware of, and I will at the end share with you some thoughts having spent a bit of time with it. So the H2D is Bambulab's latest 3D printer. This is an all-new model with lots of new features and capabilities. Not only is it a bigger printer, but it also offers more around multi-material, multi-color printing than we've seen from previous models. For me to be able to make this content today, Bambu did send me this printer over to take a look at for free. However, they have not paid me to make this video. They have not seen this video before it's been published. And as always, my thoughts are entirely my own. Probably the biggest new feature on the H2D is the fact that it has a dual hot end extruder. This not only means that you can do proper multi-material printing with both hard and soft filaments, you can also reduce the amount of unnecessary purging when using things such as support filaments. This new extruder is based off Bambu's all-new Dynasense permanent magnet brushless servo motor. This motor allows Bambu to control the torque, the speed and the position of the gear, allowing for many new features such as partial clog detection, much more precise control over the torque, improving extrusion, and that should result in improved print surface quality. For those who don't know, it's the same kind of motor that's generally used in drones for propulsion, but also things such as the new Amflow e-bike. This is then coupled to the dual hot ends. Bambu have been able to design this electromechanical architecture that allows the single extrusion motor to actually feed both hot ends, and it raises and lowers the left-hand hot end in and out of the way, ready for printing, depending on which one you've chosen to use. When printing with the left hot end, it is lowered below the height of the right-hand one to prevent any collisions. Then, when printing with the right-hand side, it is lifted up out of the way again to prevent any issues. To stop any oozing, Bambu have also added a small little nozzle blocker that switches between the two hot ends when they're being selected. Now, as standard, the H2D comes with dual 0.4mm hot ends. You can actually get different sizes, although right now you have to actually pair them up to be the same size. You can't use a 0.2 and a 0.4 or a 0.4 and a 0.8. This is a software limitation as I understand it, and this is something that Bambu may change in the future, but right now it is limited to using two hot ends of the same size. Those hot ends are both capable of up to 350 degrees C, and the extruder also features hardened gears, making it ideal for not only standard filaments, carbon fibers, but engineering filaments as well. Obviously, as a result of having that moving hot end, Z calibration could have been a bit of a challenge. However, Bambu have a solution. They've included an eddy current sensor on board, which allows the printer to calibrate its individual hot ends to ensure that you get the best possible quality from your print. The sensor is located on the edge of the build plate at the back, and it allows for the best possible calibration before your print. The nice thing about this sensor being built in is the fact that you don't need to connect and disconnect it. It's there, ready to use, and it is part of the normal print process. You may have noticed that there's a little box mounted on the right-hand side of the extruder. Unlike the X1, the H2D doesn't actually use a micro LiDAR sensor. However, it does have cameras. It has a tool head camera as well as a nozzle camera. The tool head camera is a 1080p unit designed for calibrating motion accuracy. It's used for high precision nozzle offset calibration, build plate and laser platform identification. When used with Bambu's new vision encoder board, this camera allows you to calibrate your printer at home to a level unseen before. It offers accuracy as low as 5 micrometer or offers a complete build area accuracy as low as 50 micrometer. This board is an accessory that you do have to buy from Bambu, but you do have the camera built into the printer as standard, ready to use it. There is also a 1080p nozzle camera built in just behind the two hot ends. This is for detecting abnormal print conditions such as nozzle clumping, air printing and spaghetti detection. At the point of me making this video, these sensors and cameras are only for the system. You as a user don't have access to be able to view these, but there is a built-in chamber camera which we'll talk a bit more about later on. Now, when it comes to the motion system on this printer, it is still a core XY design, but Bambu have had to completely rework everything. Those carbon rods are gone like we saw on the previous models, and we now actually have a linear rail. This is a much more beefed up solution, allowing it not only to handle the bigger extruder as a result of the dual hot ends, but also allow it for that laser capability, which is available as well. On each side, we then have our stainless rods with our whole carriage assembly sliding forward and back with our motors at the rear. Because this is a dual hot end extruder, it also has cutters built into both sides, and there's this clever little mechanism that actually moves the levers out of the way for the cutters to press when they're not needed, and then they flip out ready for the extruder to be able to press up against them when it needs to swap filaments. When it comes to the filament path, everything is very similar to as before. However, they have beefed it all up a bit. We've got a bigger chain now to hold the two PTFE tubes and all of the wiring. And then you have the filament buffers. That's now been moved internally. On the X1 and the P1S, the filament buffer was on the rear. You've now got a dual filament buffer in the top back right corner, and these then exit out the back of the printer. As a result of this, Bambu have also included a little separate path for TPU usage. Because you can't easily now disconnect the tube externally, they now ask you to disconnect it internally and pop it out of this dedicated hole, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later on. The next big feature on the H2D is its print volume, because as you can see, it is a much bigger printer than the X1 or the P1S. The maximum print volume is 350 by 350 by 325 millimeters. When comparing the build plate to the likes of the P1S or the X1, as you can see, it is substantially bigger. However, there is something that you do need to know about this because of the way the dual nozzle setup works. Obviously, we have a nozzle on the left and we have a nozzle on the right, and due to the chamber size, each nozzle can't actually reach the full edge of the print plate on either side. As a result of that, there is a slight reduction in the amount of print area that is available. When printing with a single hot end, whether it be the left or the right, you're limited to a maximum width of 325mm, but 320 to be safe. Depending on which one you choose, it simply then pushes your print a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. You can actually print up to the maximum 350mm if you were to load both hot ends with the same color filament and actually split your model in half. However, that isn't going to be ideal for most people's use cases. When it comes to using dual printing, i.e. multi-material or two different colors, if you're using the two hot ends at the same time, that available print area shrinks a little bit further down to 320mm because both nozzles are in use and you can't actually get beyond the edge of what they're capable of reaching. With regards to the print bed itself, it features a magnetic removable PEI sheet. It has a maximum bed temperature of 120 degrees C and has the same 3 rods and drive setup and has that built-in eddy current sensor as well as nozzle cleaning and calibration at the back. Another real nice feature on the print bed is what you can see flashing here, and that is a notification LED bar. Now, at first, you might think this is quite a small thing, but actually, I can tell you in use, that turns out to be very, very helpful. This gives you an indication of the status of the printer, but it even gives you an indication of how far you are through your print. It'll actually move its way up towards the right-hand side, and then it goes green when the print is complete. And it allows for very quick, easy viewing of what is going on with regards to your print status. You don't need to walk over and take a look at the display. You can simply glance across and can see the print is roughly halfway done. Just like the X1 and the P1S, the H2D is a fully enclosed printer. It features a full glass front door as well as a full glass top panel. The main structure is made of a combination of metals and plastics. You have a main metal spine with plastics and metal sheets on the outside. The side panels on the H2D are now plastic. However, they do include a nice viewing window on each side that allows you to see what's going on the print bed. This window also has a nice illuminated Bambulab logo on it as well. Internally, this printer is also designed the same as the laser version. Because it can be upgraded to use the laser, Bambu have included 5 heat sensors as well as flame retardant plastics to try and help prevent any issues with a possible flame up. Internally, the H2D also has an all-new airflow and air filtration system. It uses multiple fans to control the cavity temperature as well as the amount of cooling of your prints. On the front of the printer at the top, there's a new baffle that controls the amount of airflow that is entering the printer. On the left-hand side, we have our auxiliary cooling fan that circulates the air inside. Then at the back, you have an exhaust fan with baffles that control the amount of air that is exiting. On top of this, there is also active carbon and HEPA filtering built in. This is all controlled by dampeners, again, controlling the amount of airflow and filtering that is going on in the cavity. The way this works is on high temperature prints such as ABS, it will actually close all of the baffles and recirculate the internal air to maintain temperature. On low temperature filaments, it will open that front baffle to allow in fresh air and then exhaust air through the filters to control the internal temperature. When using it with laser engraving and cutting, it will open the baffle at the front and bypass the filtering at the back, allowing it to get as much airflow through the cavity as possible. Alongside all the air filtration and control, the H2D also has full active chamber heating. This allows you to heat the chamber up to 65 degrees C, ideal for printing the likes of ABS, ASA and PC filaments. As you would expect, Bambu have also built in a live view camera. Now this is also a 1080p camera. It's quite smooth when you look at the movement on the camera through the live view. You have access to this both in the Bambu Handy app on your phone as well as the Bambu Studio software. You can also record video as well as time-lapse footage on the printer. You can't actually do this directly to the onboard storage. You can though plug in a USB memory stick into the USB port located on the top left-hand corner of the printer, and it will then allow you to record either video and time-lapse on board. Alongside the hot end cameras, that makes a total of 3 cameras internally on the H2D. On the laser version, there is actually a 4th bird's eye camera that allows you to actually view the build plate. However, that is not fitted as standard on the H2D version. Software is a big part of any printer today, and it's no different with the H2D. Obviously, this runs Bambu's own in-house software. We have a nice big 5-inch touchscreen on the front that allows us to control all of the printer's features. It's got a really nice UI. This screen has a 720 by 1280p resolution. It's a touchscreen, and the OS on this has been completely reworked for the H2D, allowing you to control all of that main functionality. The printer is fitted with a dual-core Cortex M4 and a single-core Cortex M7 processor for motion control. It has a quad-core 1.5 GHz A7 processor for the application, and it also has an NPU capable of up to 2 flops. It has 8 GB of built-in eMMC storage, as well as Wi-Fi functionality on both the 2.4 and 5.8 gigs bands, and there is also a USB port on the top, allowing you to connect up an external storage device. All of that processing means Bambu are not only able to run their OS and motion control systems, but they can also use AI algorithms to improve overall performance. You've got those cameras located on the tool head, the hot ends, allowing it to detect print issues. And there are up to 36 sensors in this printer that are monitored throughout the process to ensure everything runs smoothly. It is worth mentioning that this printer does not have a dedicated LAN port, you only have access via the Wi-Fi function. However, it does fully support both the local LAN mode as well as the new developer mode. There are basically 4 modes of operation on this printer with regards to how you can control it. You have the cloud mode, which does it the way it comes from the factory. That allows you to control it via the Bambu slicer. All of the functionality then is available via their cloud service. You then have the LAN mode, which completely disconnects the printer from online, no access to the cloud at all, and you can use that again with the Bambu software, but just on your local network. You then also have developer mode. This does open it up to be able to be used with third-party software, and then you also have the final option of USB mode, which basically means you can slice your files, put them on a USB memory stick and pop them into the top of the printer. Alongside a new printer, we also have a new AMS module. Now this is called the AMS2 Pro. There are actually 2 different AMSs that have been released. You've got the AMS2 Pro, which is the new upgraded full-size AMS, and there's a new AMS HT, which has become available as well. Now, I don't have the HT at the moment. I'm going to order one and talk about that in a separate video in the future. The biggest change that you will see with the AMS2 Pro is the fact that you can now get easy access to the PTFE tubes. Anyone who had the original AMS who've had filament break off in any of the tubes will know it was a little bit of a pain. It wasn't the worst job in the world, but this redesign means you no longer have to take it apart. All you need to do now is take all the filaments out and you have easy access to the PTFE tubes. Alongside this change, there is also upgrades all over. We now have brushless servo feeding motors on each of these. So rather than the standard DC motor, you've got a lovely brushless motor there now, which should just reduce overall noise. I have already noticed it is a lot quieter in use. You still have your RFID sensors, but this now also has a built-in filament drying function. This can actually dry up to 65 degrees C. There are actually air vents built into this. There are air vents on the back and underneath that control the airflow, and it allows you to dry your filaments internally. That isn't going to be ideal for every filament, and that is why Bambu have also released their AMS HT, but for your standard filaments, it's certainly going to be plenty. Now, obviously, they've had to move things around as a result of these changes. The little compartments are gone underneath now, and if you want to put desiccant in, that can be now moved into the back. You've got 2 pockets for it there, but you do still have the gaps at the front between each of the motors as well if you want to. With regards to the rollers and wheels at the back, these are solid plastic, and then we have our rubber wheels here at the front, very similar to what we had before. Now externally, it is pretty much the same. On the back, you will find 2 ports for the AMS for input and output. We've got a 24-volt DC jack. Over here, you can see the first air vent, and then on the bottom down here is the second air vent. What's nice about those vents is the fact that they do mean that inside the AMS is both an airtight and moisture-tight environment. Now, externally, other than that, it is pretty much the same, although you may have noticed that DC jack earlier on the back. This AMS is designed to be used with the H2D, and when you're using one AMS with a H2D, you don't need to provide it external power. However, you can use up to 4 AMS modules and 8 AMS HT modules on this printer, and as a result of that, you will need the power adapter if you want to have the drying function on those additional AMS units. The basics are, this printer can power up to 1 AMS, but if you need more than one, you can absolutely connect them, but you're going to need to buy the external Bambu 24-volt power adapter. When using the AMS, there are also a few things you need to be aware of. For instance, you can only connect one AMS to one hot end. You cannot feed this AMS into 2 hot ends at the same time. You can choose either side to connect it to, whether it be the left or the right, but what it can't do is automatically switch between the 2. There is only a single output from the AMS that goes into the input. You can obviously, as I've said earlier, connect multiple AMSs. So if you wanted to have automatic control via both hot ends, you can use 2 different AMS units, or you could alternatively go and get yourself something like the AMS HT, which will also feed directly as well. If you're doing flexibles, you can obviously do rigids via the AMS and flexibles on the external spool holder. Nothing has changed around compatibility on the AMS and TPUs. You can still use the AMS with Bambu's internal TPU for AMS, but you can't use traditional TPUs, standard 95As in the AMS. They are always going to need to go on an external spool holder. As I showed earlier, there is a hole at the back specially for feeding with TPU. You simply need to disconnect the PTFE tube from the hot end you intend to use and feed that through the hole at the back, bypassing the internal filament buffer. There is also one other thing just to take into account with regards to using flexibles such as TPU, and that is the hot end, because unfortunately you're limited to being able to just use one hot end with flexible filaments, the right hand one. At this moment in time, the left hand hot end that moves up and down is not compatible with flexible filaments. So whilst you can absolutely do things such as multi-material, multi-color printing with things like PLA, PetG, TPU, you are still limited to one flexible filament input. What you can't do is use both hot ends for different color flexibles at this time. Okay, so what I want to do next is share with you some of my thoughts on my experience with the H2D so far, from delivery right through to the test prints. Now, I haven't tested everything yet. I've gone through the basic filaments, PLAs, PetGs, TPUs. I've tested support filaments. I haven't got into the carbon fibers and some of the others yet. I'll be doing that later on. I've done my basic set of tests, and I have to say initially it has performed almost perfectly. About the only thing I had some issues with was TPU, and actually that turned out to be the slicing profile, not the printer, and I'll talk about TPU specifically because there's quite a lot to understand. With regards to receiving the printer, it arrived absolutely fine. I actually did a live unboxing of this printer on the channel. If you're interested in seeing it, I'll put a link to that down below. It is a really big box and a really heavy box. It came in the UK via that service. Wasn't the fastest service in the world. It seemed to get lost, or not lost, probably not the right term. It seemed to sort of sit somewhere for a week and then it arrived. The updates from that service didn't really seem great, but it arrived absolutely fine, no damage. The delivery drivers were phenomenal as well. I did have that waiver that they're sending to say they won't deliver inside your property if you don't sign it. I didn't even want them to deliver mine inside. They delivered it outside at the front, and I then arranged to move it myself. You're gonna need someone. You're not going to be able to move this on your own. With regards to that waiver, it's simply about them not causing damage to your property. It's a very heavy printer. My advice to you is if you don't want to sign the waiver, just have them deliver it outside your property and you arrange to move it yourselves. Take into account, even something random like a stone being trapped under the box and they moved it in on your floor could scratch your floor and then they'd be liable. So that's why they're asking for the waiver like that. I completely get it. Now, with regards to the prints, so far everything has been really, really good. PLA has worked absolutely perfectly. PetG has worked absolutely perfectly. As I've said, the only things we had some fun with was the TPU, and it wasn't that bad. It was just a couple of little changes, which I'll talk about in a minute. I do also want to cover, before we look at the prints, the bed, because I have seen a lot of comments about people having issues with prints not sticking to the bed, adhesion, and issues around that. I have to say, I've not had any of it, and I mean zero. Everything has stuck to the bed perfectly. When I received my printer, I didn't even clean the bed. I usually would scrub it with soap and water and dry it and make sure it's perfect. I didn't. I tested it as it was. Mine has been perfect. I do know Bambu have tweaked the firmware slightly to increase the temperature, and that seems to have helped. There's a lot of talk around the heater in the bed and where the heater's placed. Honestly, I think people are making a far bigger issue of this than it really is. I've seen people posting around big prints curving and lifting, and I think people also have to understand, if you're used to printing things like this, and then you think, oh, I got a nice big print, I'm going to print a full bed print. It is completely different. You have to then start taking into account all of the quirks and the behaviors around very large flat areas, long areas where the filaments will shrink. If you're going to do a full bred print of a big square item, it is going to warp, it is going to lift. It is the nature of the filament. The printer cannot physically prevent warpage, even with a heated build plate and a heated chamber. There is natural shrinkage within filaments, and you may need to take extra steps to protect from that. That could be clips holding the bed down, or that might be designing your print in such a way that you don't have very big long areas, or changing the infill pattern, because all of these things can make a massive difference. Overall, from a print perspective, on the bed, mine has done what it should have done. It is going to come with some complexity just due to its sheer size, but that is no different to other big printers, and anyone who prints big items would have come across that. If you have had issues, I would suggest making sure you have fully washed your build plate as the number one thing. And if you're still having problems, try jacking the temperature up 10 degrees, maybe 5, then 10. But again, I'll be honest, mine has been perfect. Moving on to just some of the prints that I've done, and this is a small selection. I just want to show you a couple of the early ones. One of the very first prints I did was this big octopus. It's in PLA. It's actually a multicolour print. So we've got green on the bottom, we've got this blue multicolour all the way up, and then we've got white and black. And it's great. 0.2 millimeters, absolutely fine, no issues. Bottom all looks perfect. As it's 0.2 mil, no gaps, even the top layer looks quite nice. Obviously, you could use variable layer height if you wanted to tidy that up a little bit. Even the difference between the colours is really clean. Honestly, just no issues at all. I think it's a really good print. There's really nothing else to say about that. Obviously, I did a couple of the benchies, the usual things as tests. I've got no complaints. We've got the usual bow line along the bottom. This one had the stitch line go through the writing at the back. I didn't notice that before I sliced it. It's not a fault of the printer. It's just where the stitch line went. Little bit of a gap on the stitch line, but not too bad. Overall, a little bit of a mark on the layer height. I'll be honest, it looks like any of the speed benchies that we've printed. You can't expect a speed benchy to be perfect. It won't. A speed benchy is going to have some imperfections, especially around the bow area here, because that's the area where it changes the infill, it changes the speed. Overall, though, bottom layer looks spot on. One of my favourite prints I've done on the H2D is this, and this is obviously the dragon, and it's done in this sort of knitted effect externally. So I'm just going to show you the bottom layer, and I did it in this glittery black, and this has just come out beautiful. I love this little print, I really do. Obviously multicolour, we've got green in there for the eyes as well. 0.2 millimeter, nothing particularly special. It's got a couple of little straddly bits where it doesn't have supports. There was no supports on this at all. So you can see you got a couple of little straddly, but that adds to the effect on it. But I think it is a really cool print, a really cool print. And I'm really pleased with how that's come out. With regards to some of these with the multicolours, you obviously get a bit of wastage on things like on prime towers. So I do have a few prime towers. What I would say with the printing is you're saving on purging, not necessarily priming with the dual nozzles. The two nozzles are not saving you from a prime tower. You still need a prime tower. If we take a look at this one, this was a test I did with PLA and support filament, and you can see it's put the support filament in there. This is the one from the octopus, I think this is. Yes, that's the octopus prime tower. So you can see the different colours there. Ironically, you can see that as the filament has shifted colour as well, because the blue changes. And where you're really saving is on, with the dual nozzles, is the fact that it's not having to purge as much between prints. But if you are doing multi-colours through the AMS, purging is still a reality. The only time it doesn't need to purge as much is if you're doing things like this one. This was a print filament on one and a support filament on the other. I cancelled this print a short way in because I didn't really need it to finish. I was printing the benchy vertically like that. That's the support filament I used. And then you can see there on the bow where that support filament was. Not perfect because it's never going to be, especially under support filament. But it allows you to print it in that angle, pretty much like that if you wanted to. I also, as I said, printed with multi-material, which is this one here. Now, this is a PetG print, a PetG box, which I then modified in two ways. It comes with all of these holes already in it, screw holes, but I modified it so the top layers had TPU. So that is TPU there to make it watertight, and also built in a TPU breakthrough section, so you can see full TPU on the inside there. And the idea is it would allow me to pierce these through and put cables. This was 95A, so I didn't have it as soft as it could have been. You wouldn't just want to pierce this and push a cable through. You'd still want a little bit of seal. But the idea was to demonstrate that I could do multi-material printing. So the idea with the box is that it has this sealed lid. This is the lid, which is just PetG. So that then goes on the top and you have that really nice, ready to go. And it's just an indication of the kind of things you can do from an engineering perspective. Also with multi-material, I printed this. Now it's a silly little part that I found on Maker World from Bambu Studio, and it's a hinge. And it's a TPU stroke PLA hinge. You can print it in whatever material you want, but the idea is that you can make a multi-material hinge that made of TPU, made of whatever material you want on the outside. You could simply use it as a hinge on something. And again, it just shows you the kind of things that you can do on this printer. The TPU is fully bound into the back. It had support underneath because it's not at the bottom. You could actually design this a little differently. So the TPU was on the bed. It wasn't on the bed. So there was a support piece underneath, hence the reason there's a little bit of roughness there in the TPU. But that's just because it printed on top of a piece of PLA support. But it's really cool and it's really interesting the kind of things you can do. That TPU is completely bound within the print, so it's not going to tear off. And it just shows simple. I completely agree. It's a simple component, but you couldn't do this without that multi-material capability easily. You can do these things. You could manually swap the filaments, but you'd be there for the rest of your life. I simply set this off, let it print, and it was done. Obviously, this channel, we do a lot of drones, and TPU is one of the main filaments that I print. The H2D absolutely prints TPU fine. There are things you need to be aware of. There are a few, I'm not going to say quirks, it's just differences between the early printers. I saw someone post a comment online saying, and I think it was referencing a review actually, that said, TPU seems like an afterthought on this printer. And genuinely, I do not believe that's the case. There are differences, and the biggest difference for the change in the way you have to treat TPU is as a result of A, them moving the filament buffers internally at the back, and B, the dual nozzles. Only one of the nozzles, hot ends, can use TPU. That is the right-hand side. That is the hot end that doesn't move. It isn't particularly shocking that you can't use TPU in the left because that hot end moves up and down internally. Your TPU is not going to stay rigid. It's going to try and bunch up. And that, as I understand it, is the issue with using TPU in the left-hand side compared to the right. The movement of the hot end is going to cause the filament to bunch up rather than slide back in the tube. If you think about it, with a rigid filament, when that hot end goes up, that filament will be pushed up back into the tube and it will push back the filament buffer. The spring on the filament buffer is going to push it back. TPU is soft. it's got the potential to bunch up even if you've bypassed the filament buffer, and then that means it's not going to behave, you're going to have a clog. So I can completely understand why Bambu have restricted TPU to the right-hand hot end. I would absolutely love to run TPU on both, and I hope Bambu may play with this and maybe give us an override if you take the risk option on it, but I completely understand why that's the case. With regards to the reconfiguring, yes, you have to take the tube off and move it, but there are some really nice mods out around this that I've already done to my printer. That isn't really an afterthought. It's as a result of moving the filament buffers inside. On the P1S and the X1, you still had to bypass the filament buffer with TPU. Nothing has changed around this. All that's changed is, whereas before you had to do it on the back of the printer, now you have to do it internally. So I don't agree that it's an afterthought. It is a different setup. I have used TPU through the tube, out the back, next to the printer on the spool holder, and it has printed fine. I have also tried printing with it above the printer as well, directly down into the hot end. That's fine as well. You've got to make sure there isn't too much restriction on the filament path for TPU, but that's the same as any printer. The existing filament path, if you take it out the hole at the back, put your filament in at the side at the back, is fine. It works without an issue. I don't think it's remotely as bad as some people have made out, and I certainly don't think it's an afterthought. When it came to printing TPU, though, I did have some issues, but none of this was hardware. It was all software. All of these are generic TPUs. That's Overture, not generic, but not Bambu. That's SaneSmart. As you can see, I had some failures. These are the ones I started with, the blacks first of all. To be crystal clear, these weren't dried. These filaments weren't dried beforehand. I always test it as it is around here. These were horrific. It wasn't working right. You can see there. I stopped it because I was out that that's a complete waste of time. I then did another test. What's interesting is this test is printed with the filament path through the back of the printer as Bambu recommend. I then started to wonder if that was the issue, so I did another test with the filament going straight into the hot end from above, and it was exactly the same. So I then swapped filaments and hopped over to the Overture TPU. Overture is definitely softer. Both of these are 95A, but it's definitely softer than SaneSmart. There's always just a bit more of a softness to the Overture, even in the feel. And again, it was better, but it wasn't right. If you look at the surface, it wasn't correct. Again, I tried some other changes and it was the same. And what turns out was, it was the profile. I was using the standard TPU, generic TPU Bambu profile. And I'm going to say to you, don't. It's not working as good as it could, clearly. I then used the same filament on the Bambu TPU profile, and it has come out almost perfect. Yes, there are some retraction marks. This filament, I will add, has also not been dried. This was as it was in the room. The print is come out clean. It's working fine. I think that the profile needs a little bit of a tweak for Overture. Yes, you can see retraction marks located there. You get that a little bit on this blue. But other than that, once I used the Bambu TPU profile, it's pretty much there. It was printed with supports. That's come out pretty good. Genuinely, that is on par with what I've had from the P1S, what I've had from the A1 Mini. I'm not saying it's perfect. I would like to tweak it a little bit, but what I can tell you is once you use the right profile, it's working absolutely fine. So from the TPU side, don't use the Bambu generic profile, or if you are, you want to tweak it. There aren't retractions on it as standard. Bambu are probably going to update this in the near future anyway. Try the Bambu profile regardless of the TPU you're using, and maybe you might want to tweak things from there. What I would say is, I think Bambu have got their own profiles absolutely tweaked and tuned nicely on the H2D. I think there's some work to be done on the generics though. And that's where things probably are causing a few problems for some people. But from a printing TPU perspective, it's absolutely fine. Obviously, you do have those limitations that you can only print with TPU on the right-hand nozzle. There's also a bit of a quirk, obviously, that you have to have both nozzles of the same size. Bambu have got their new range of TPUs, which I've got and I'm testing now as well. I'm actually making a dedicated TPU video on the H2D, and I'm going to talk about them in that. A bit of a downside in them is the lower numbers, the softer filaments, you need to move up in nozzle size, and you can't actually print with two different nozzle sizes on the H2D at the moment. That's a bit of a shame. That's something I hope they work on in the future as well. Final observations around using the printer. It is definitely big, that's for sure. It moves around a lot on its flexible feet. Incredibly flexible they are, and it does wobble, but that wobble doesn't translate into your surfaces around it. It absolutely needs to be on a solid table, a solid work surface, because it will start to resonate a little bit. And though I didn't notice they affected any of the prints, one or two of these was done on that initial table you saw the printer on earlier. But it definitely needs to be on something solid. It will move, but it doesn't translate that movement out. It is definitely a bit quieter from an AMS perspective as well. Those brushless motors in the AMS definitely make a difference. It's not silent. It just doesn't have as much of that high-speed whine that you had on the original AMS. The 2 Pro is definitely a little bit quieter. The printer isn't necessarily quieter. As you've seen earlier, it's got all of that ventilation option, all of that stuff. That's going to make noise. That's just a reality. Overall, my opinions on the H2D. Well, I don't think this printer's for everyone. If you don't need the bed size and you don't need the dual nozzles, I think the P1S is still an incredible model to consider with the AMS or the X1. However, this printer has some super interesting capabilities that I'm only starting to touch on. Possibilities like this box, like you see here. Yes, you can do this on other printers. Yes, you could modify things on your other printers. But I really like this capability, and I've only scratched the surface of what's possible. And I really like what Bambu have done with this dual hot end setup. It seems to work perfectly. I've had no complaints about the quality between the nozzles. I have been testing that on some stuff. That built-in calibration system as well does exactly what it's meant to do. I think if you are interested in a machine that's going to allow you to do things that you can't do on the X1 or the P1S without manual intervention, then this is definitely worth a look. I am really as well looking forward to what Bambu are going to do around this printer with the other nozzle, the hot end. Maybe give us TPU support on both, please, Bambu, even at our own risk. Yes, you could modify the profile, but it would be nice to have an override. I get why they haven't done it, but it would be cool if you could sort of have it as an option. Dual color TPU printing would be very, very nice. Other than that, I actually really like the H2D. I have really zero complaints. I suppose I should touch on cost, and this is a complicated thing right now because cost is, I don't even know what it's going to cost you. This printer in the UK, as I had it here, I think it was around $2,000 to start. I think for what you're getting for that, it's great. I have no complaints on the build size. I have no complaints on the dual nozzle setup. There's some stuff I'd like. It would be nice. But I think it does this real nice mid-ground between something like what Prusa have on their XL with your 4 heads, your 4 hot ends, your 4 extruders, maybe 5 if you go that far. Obviously, that's going to give you true multi-material capability beyond this, but I don't think many people actually need that. And if you're looking to be able to do things like phone cases where you can want to do TPU and PetG, or things like this where you want to mix something with like a TPU seal, it does it absolutely fine. There's some really nice options around that. And I just really think I'm interested in what they do next. And for the price, no complaints. Just from me, no complaints. I do think at times people rush out and buy things before really understanding what it's going to do for them. If you want that dual nozzle hot end setup, then the H2D is going to give it to you. You can't do TPU on both. As long as you understand that, you can do one on solids, one on flexibles. It's going to do exactly what you want. And it has all of the real great stuff from Bambu that I haven't even touched on in this video. Haven't had a chance to get through the slicer. It's Bambu slicer. You know what it does. The software is great. It just works. It just works like all the other Bambu printers. So you get that with the dual hot end, multi-material capability. What more do you want? Really, that's it. And if you do want more, then there are solutions for that. That's it from me on this one. I hope you found it interesting. Let me know what you think. Genuinely, still working on it. More videos to come, more content to come. Big thank you to Bambulab for sending this over. Massive, massive thank you. If you are interested in getting one, there is a link in the description. It is an affiliate link. Bambu is one of the only brands I use affiliate links on. I have a number of videos on Bambu products, and I've used the affiliate links on all of them. And I have always found their products very good. And that isn't because they give me an affiliate link. It's because they work. I will tell you, if you want a printer to print stuff for FPV, go and buy the A1 Mini. I'll tell you, if you want multicolour, go and get the P1S. If you want multi-material, H2D. I don't care. I don't even care if you use the link. I'm telling you these printers are good because they are good. And if you go and read the comments in any of those videos, there ain't loads of people going, this guy lied to me because he's a shill. There ain't loads of comments on any of the Bambu videos of people saying, I was recommended this and it's terrible. The truth is very simple. They deliver a decent product. And I think the H2D is going to really fit nicely into that world. So if you're interested in getting one, the link is down below. Finally, I really want to know what you think. Let me know about your comments. Any questions, I will try and answer them. And finally, if you'd like to support the channel, please do consider checking out links to my Patreon as well as buying me a coffee. I want to say a massive thank you to all of my Patreons. That's it. Stay safe, and I will speak to you soon.